Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We've got a fascinating batch of articles to dig into today, all about the impact of AI.
Yeah, looks like our theme this time is bogus apps, AI boomtown, better embeddings, 2024 highlights. Quite a mouthful.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. We've got everything from geoengineering to online businesses, even the future of text embeddings.
A real mixed bag, but I think the common thread running through all of these is how AI is rapidly changing, well, everything.
No exaggeration there.
Yeah.
2023 was the hottest year on record, right? Hurricanes like Helene and Milton were just devastating. It's no wonder that Andrew Ng's article on geoengineering really caught my eye.
It's a bold proposal for sure, urging us to seriously consider stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, as a way to combat climate change.
SAI, that's the one where we're basically spraying particles into the atmosphere to block sunlight, right? It feels a bit like, I don't know, science fiction. It does sound a bit sci-fi, you're right, but the idea is actually based on natural phenomena. Think back to the Mount Pinatubo eruption in '91. That volcano released massive amounts of aerosols into the stratosphere and actually cooled the planet for a few years. SAI is about trying to replicate that effect, but in a controlled way.
So there is a precedent. Okay. But even if we can do it, the question is, should we? I have to imagine there's some downsides, some risks involved.
Oh, absolutely. Some big ones, too. The articles mention the risk of unintended consequences. Messing with the stratosphere could disrupt weather patterns, potentially leading to droughts or floods in unexpected places.
Right, like a domino effect. We solve one problem and create a whole bunch of new ones.
Exactly. And then there's what they call termination shock, where if we ever had to stop SAI after implementing it, the planet could heat up incredibly rapidly.
Wow, okay, yeah, not good. And I imagine there are also ethical dilemmas to consider, right? Didn't the article say that even Inself was initially hesitant about this approach?
Yeah, he was, and understandably so. We're talking about geoengineering on a massive scale, a huge decision with potentially unforeseen consequences. It was a tough one for him to grapple with.
I bet. So it's a matter of weighing the risks against the potential benefits. But we can't ignore the human cost of inaction either, can we?
Absolutely not. The article quotes meteorologist John Morales, who said, "It claims lives, it also wrecks lives." He was talking about Hurricane Milton, but it's a stark reminder that while we debate the ethics, climate change is already having a very real and devastating impact on people's lives.
It really makes you stop and think, that's for sure. But it also sounds like AI could be part of the solution, right? What was that about a planet parasol emulator?
That's one of the really interesting things happening here. Eng's team is actually using AI to build this emulator that can model different SAI scenarios.
Mm.
This way we can get a better sense of the potential impacts, both positive and negative, before taking any real-world action.
So kind of like a test run in the digital world before we go experimenting on the real one.
Exactly. It just goes to show how AI is transforming scientific decision-making, which, by the way, was a major point highlighted by this year's Nobel Prizes in chemistry and physics.
It seems like AI is both part of the problem and potentially a big part of the solution. And speaking of solutions, this whole idea of AI needing massive computing power brings us to our next topic. Malaysia's data center boom. Now, this is an interesting one.
It is fascinating. Definitely not the first place that comes to mind when you think tech hub, right?
Not exactly Silicon Valley. So what's driving this trend? What makes Malaysia so special?
Well, it's a classic case of supply and demand, really, but with a geopolitical twist.
Yeah.
You see, those traditional data center hubs, places like Ireland and Virginia.
Right, those big server farms you always hear about.
Exactly. They're starting to hit their limits. Space is getting scarce, resources are getting stretched thin, and you even have some local communities pushing back.
Makes sense. Not everyone wants a giant, power-hungry data center in their backyard.
Exactly. So that's where Malaysia comes in, particularly the state of Johor. It's becoming a very attractive alternative for those companies looking to set up shop.
Okay, so, Johor. What makes it so special? Is it just about location, or is there something more at play here?
Location is definitely key. Johor has this strategic position in Southeast Asia, close to major shipping routes, and with access to relatively affordable energy.
So, good logistics, check.
Yeah, but there's more to it. The Malaysian government is actively encouraging data center development. They're offering incentives, streamlining regulations. Plus, let's not forget, Johor is right next door to Singapore.
Ah, right, a global tech hub in its own right.
Precisely. So you've got this perfect storm brewing, this confluence of factors that make Johor incredibly appealing. And the companies, well, they're taking notice.
Yeah, the article mentions some big names, ByteDance, Microsoft. Oracle. These aren't exactly small-time players, are they?
They're heavy hitters,
Mhm.
for sure. And trust me, they don't invest millions, even billions of dollars without a good reason. They clearly see the long-term potential in Malaysia.
It's interesting, though, ByteDance setting up shop in Malaysia, given all the geopolitical tensions right now. It's almost like they're hedging their bets, diversifying their risks.
Oh, it's a strategic move, no doubt about it. And it highlights a much bigger trend that's happening right now,
Yeah.
the rise of the Asia-Pacific region as a tech powerhouse. Did you know that they're on track to overtake Europe in data center construction?
Wow, I did not know that. That's a seismic shift. So if Malaysia does become this AI powerhouse, what does that mean for, well, everyone else?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the one hand, it could help to democratize access to AI, allow more nations to participate in the tech economy. But on the other hand, it also raises some serious questions about responsible development, ethical considerations, the need for regulation, all that good stuff.
Right, because with great power comes great responsibility or
Yeah.
something like that.
Words to live by. And speaking of responsibility, that reminds me of that other article we wanted to discuss, the one about the FTC cracking down on companies making those bogus AI claims. Operation AI Comply kind of has a ring to it, don't you think?
Catchy, but also a little concerning. Sounds like things were getting a bit out of control.
It does seem like the Wild West out there, a bit of a free-for-all. But it also shows that regulators are starting to take notice, that they're taking steps to address the very real risks posed by AI.
Yeah, like that whole issue with misleading advertising. People need to be able to trust that companies are being truthful about what their AI can actually do.
Absolutely. And it's not just about exaggeration either. Some of those companies were allegedly using AI for straight-up deceptive practices. Remember that article about Writetree, that writing tool caught generating fake reviews?
Yeah, that was a bit shady. Just goes to show that this technology can be used for good or bad, just like any other.
Exactly. And for regulators, it's like trying to hit a moving target. You know,
Hmm.
AI is constantly evolving, so staying one step ahead of those who would misuse it, that's the real challenge.
It's a global issue too, isn't it? I remember the article mentioning that AI regulation is kind of all over the place right now, fragmented depending on where you look.
It's a real patchwork quilt out there. You've got the U.S. relying on existing laws, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Right, trying to make those old rules work for this new tech.
Then you have Europe taking a more cautious, comprehensive approach with their AI Act, a whole set of regulations specifically designed for AI.
And then there's China, always marching to the beat of their own drum.
They've got their own thing going on, that's for sure, with their stricter controls and everything. I mean, they're even requiring companies to submit their AI models for review. Can you believe that?
Talk about keeping things on a tight leash. It'll be interesting to see which approach, if any, proves to be the most effective in the long run. But hey, why don't we switch gears a bit, talk about something a little less, I don't know, heavy? How about those text embeddings? Had to do a little research myself on that one, I'll admit.
Oh, yeah, embeddings. That's getting into some pretty cool territory.
It's fascinating stuff, but pretty technical too. Can you give us the, shall we say, the layman's explanation?
Sure. So basically, a text embedding is a way to represent words or even whole sentences as numbers, as data.
Mhm.
This way, we're translating language into a format that AI can understand and work with.
So it's like giving AI the ability to actually read between the lines, to understand the nuances of human language.
You got it. It's like teaching AI to speak our language, but instead of words, it's all numbers and vectors and algorithms under the hood.
Fascinating. And this technology, it has some pretty big implications, right? I mean, I read that it's being used to improve everything from search engines to get this detecting plagiarism. Yeah.
Oh yeah, embeddings are popping up everywhere. But one of the really exciting developments here is this new open weight model called Gina Embeddings V3.
Open weight, meaning anyone can use it. No more walled gardens.
You got it. It's all about accessibility and collaboration. And this Gina thing, it's designed to be incredibly versatile. It uses these things called LoRa adapters, which allow you to fine-tune the model for different tasks without having to retrain the entire system from the ground up.
Okay, so it's like having a Swiss Army knife of text embeddings.
That's a great way to put it. Need to do some information retrieval? Boom. Sentiment analysis? No problem. Gina can handle it. And here's the really cool part. It can do all of that with a smaller embedding size than a lot of other models, which is kind of a big deal.
Smaller is better in this case. How so?
Well, typically when you have smaller embeddings, it means you're sacrificing performance. It's a trade-off, right? But with this Gina Embeddings V3, they've managed to achieve some really impressive results, even with this lighter weight model.
So it's like they found a way to make it more efficient, more streamlined.
Exactly. And that has huge implications because it makes this technology much more accessible, particularly for folks who might have limited computing resources.
Right, because not everyone has access to those massive server farms we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is potentially a game changer for individuals, startups, researchers, anyone who wants to experiment with text embeddings but maybe thought it was out of reach before.
It's like democratizing access to these powerful tools, which seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of what we're discussing today. Whether it's geoengineering, those data centers, or even these text embeddings, we're talking about technologies that have the potential to reshape, well, the world as we know it.
No exaggeration there. We're at a very interesting, perhaps even pivotal moment. These advancements, they offer incredible opportunities, no doubt, but they also come with a whole host of risks and responsibilities, things we really need to consider carefully.
Yeah, it's exciting, but also a little daunting, wouldn't you say? Like we're standing at the edge of the unknown.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important that we're having these conversations, asking the tough questions, really grappling with the ethical implications of all of this. We need to make sure that these technologies are being used for good, that they benefit everyone, not just a select few.
Couldn't agree more. So, if there's one thing you take away from our deep dive today, what would you say it should be?
I'd say it's this. AI is not some distant future anymore. It's here, it's evolving rapidly, and it's already shaping our world in profound ways. The choices we make today, both individually and collectively, those choices will determine what that future looks like.
That's a powerful thought to end on. It's a lot to ponder, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So as you go out there and continue exploring these topics, ask yourself, what role do you want to play in shaping this evolving landscape? Until next time, keep those brains engaged and keep those questions coming. We'll see you on the next deep dive.